The Complete Natural Food Retailer's Workshop with Danny Wells, Tape 1.
And I want to welcome you to the Natural Food Retailer Workshop. My name is Danny Wells, and I'll be your captain through this journey. If you are signed up for both workshops, it'll be more or less 11 hours of concentrated learning and education on natural food retailing. I'd like to start first finding out a little bit about our group here. As far as the stores that we have, how many of us have stores that are 1,000 square feet or less? Okay, good. 1,000 to 3,000 square feet. Great. And 3,000 to 5,000. Okay. And over 5,000. Okay, we have a really good mix. How many are here that are looking to open up a natural food store that aren't in the business yet? Do we have anybody that, okay, we've got, 3 or 4 that are looking, 5 that are looking to open up their first store, or maybe their second or third store. I'm happy that you're here, and I'm happy to be here. I started in this industry, was first introduced in the industry in the 1950s when my father walked me into a natural food store, and I got my first whiff of brewer's yeast. And I learned at a very early age to hate brewer's yeast. In fact, I still hate brewer's yeast. My father asked my brother and I to learn in the store how to bag grains, nuts, seeds, and whatever. And after school, we would come to the store, and he would have a list there of things for us to bag. And my brother and I would immediately divide this into 2 lists. The list of things we like to bag, like sunflower seeds and almonds, and that was kind of fun. And then there was this list of things like brewer's yeast, skim milk powder, and kelp, which we just hated to bag. And I remember my father coming in one time when we were not really excited about doing this brewer's yeast bagging, and we were trying to get it done very quickly so we could get out to a baseball game. And there was this powdered yeast all over the back of the store. There was just a cloud of yeast he came digging through to find his 2 sons in there trying to get it into a bag. And if you've ever tried to bag brewer's yeast, you'll realize when you get brewer's yeast on the outside of a cello bag and try to scotch tape it, that it doesn't work too well. So instead of having the 3 pieces of scotch tape like we were directed, there must have been 15 or 20 pieces of tape on every bag because the powdered yeast was all over the place. So I still have learned to not tolerate brewer's yeast very well. But since that time, I've learned an awful lot about the industry. And what this workshop is about, all of our workshops, is essentially sharing with you not only the information that I've gathered in the 16 or 17 years that I've actually had and operated stores, but also now in the last 5 years as a consultant. I've worked with hundreds of natural food retailers and have gone into their operations, analyzed them, evaluated, looked over their profit and loss statements, finding out what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. So as a result, we're sharing with you a compilation of all these things we found of what we do right in the industry, and then alerting you and alarming you to what we're also doing wrong, so hopefully you can save thousands of dollars on these mistakes. I found that success is a combination of 2 things, what you know and what you do. And I can guarantee you that when you leave this workshop tomorrow or the advanced one on Sunday, that you will know more about natural food retailing than you do at this particular point. Now, what you do with that is up to you. And that's the hardest part, because I found that success is really about 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, or essentially 1% idea and 99% actually getting out there and doing the work. Most of us in this room have entered the industry because we love the natural food industry. We embrace the movement. We might have taken a vitamin or a mineral or an herb and it helped improve our health or a problem that we had. And as a result, we developed this tremendous love for these products, for the healing industry, and then we went in and got a health food store. We opened a natural food store. And this is really good, because as a result, we have one of the finest group of people an industry could ever ask for. If you've ever been involved in other industries and come to this industry, people are amazed at how good the people are and sincere the people are. You go outside this industry and you have backbiting. You have people just will say anything and stabbing them in the back to get up the corporate ladder and to try to get above somebody else. And the dishonesty that's out there is just amazing. In this industry, generally the people are really good-hearted, sincere, and want to really help people to live better, to live more healthfully, and to overcome disease. And this is fabulous. Now, the downside is that very few of us have had any formal business training on how to run a natural food store. And so what happens is we get out there with all this enthusiasm and open up the doors, And we don't know anything about cash management or inventory control or really how to merchandise or how to properly buy. And then by process of trial and error, some of us do things very well and other of us are just struggling along. Generally, the profits in the natural food industry are among the lowest of any industry in the United States for this reason. Because we don't come in first with the business knowledge and background of how to run the business. We come in first with just a love for the industry and products. And that's essentially what this workshop is about, is now to give that balance so that we can learn the business side. Now, we can have a great experience here in the next couple days if you do two things. One is, when you came through that door, I hope that your mind would be something like this blank piece of paper, and you might erase it to any preconceived ideas of how you had about doing business. I'm not here to say that everything that you're doing is wrong, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't doing a lot of things that were right. But just be open and receptive to some new ideas and new ways of doing things. There are individuals in here who have stores that are less than 1,000 square feet, and certain things we're talking about are going to apply to you more than maybe a store that has 10,000 square feet. But then again, there are stores that have the 10,000 square feet. Things I'm going to say are going to apply to you much more than somebody with 1,000 square feet, because we have all these different size stores here in the same room. So be open to new ideas. And number two, I'm going to ask, is that we make this a workshop, meaning you work just as hard as I do, not only in taking notes. If you've got a workbook, it's going to save you a little bit of time there. But number two, you ask questions. If there's something that you don't understand or you're not sure how it might apply to your store, then ask a question. We all learn from this. At every workshop that I conduct, I learn something. In fact, you'll find, those of you who have workbooks, the workbooks are going to be probably 5 or 6 pages less than what I have up here, because every time I'm finished with the seminar, people will come and say, gee, this is something we want to know about. That'd be a good idea. Let's put that in the workshop. So we get another overhead in, and so we're always about a month or two behind of the overheads that are in the workbooks. We're going to have breaks, so you'll know, every hour. I found that the mind and the body can only absorb what the bottom can endure, and that's about 59 minutes. And so what we're going to do is to let you know ahead of time that you'll have those breaks. You can go back, there's water in the bank, or you have to use the restroom, so you won't find that you're getting there kind of antsy waiting when we're going to be breaking. The back of your packet, I'd like to have you turn to this back page. And on item number 1, I'd like you to put down, and this is for yourself, why you came here. Or put another way, what do you expect to gain? What do you expect to leave here with? Why are you investing essentially 7 or 8 hours of your time? What is it that you want to learn? For number 1. Now, you're not going to have to share that with anyone, so you can be real honest. And in number 2, I'd like you to put down in that section, if you're still writing in number 1, that's okay, finish that up. But in number 2, what is one of your biggest challenges? Or what is your biggest problem in the store? Or what do you think the one thing that's keeping you from achieving higher profits? Biggest challenge, problem, or preventing you from achieving higher profits? What might that be, that one thing there? And 3 and 4 we're going to be leaving until a little bit while later, so you can just complete those 2. When I started in retail and I found that there were so many things we had to do, so many things I had to concentrate, I wasn't sure what to concentrate on most. It's like the young man who gets called in by the principal and puts his report card down in front of him and says, look at this report card. 5 F's and 1 D. Looks at the boy and says, you have to stop concentrating on only one subject. In natural food retailing, sometimes we concentrate just on one subject. When I first started to get involved in my store, I should say I had my store for maybe 5 or 6 years, I thought, what would it be like if I could be in retailing heaven? All of us have a different thought in our mind of what this heaven or hereafter may be, this place that's going to be hopefully a step above where we are here. And so I went through and I analyzed the industry at that time, and this time I had a store that was 1,700 square feet. And I looked and found through the industry statistics that the average store my size was doing about $225,000 a year in volume. Its net profit was 6%. The workday was about 5 days. The average owner put in 5 days, and those were usually 12-hour days. Now, one thing I forgot to ask here was, how many of us here are owners or operators of stores? Okay. And how many of us are employees? Okay. How many of us that are employees would like to own or operate our own stores someday? Okay, not as many hands. How many of us that are owners would like to sell this store and become an employee again and get rid of this headache? Okay. Because it's... You'll find that you'll look at this seminar a little differently as an owner and an employee, and you'll see how it develops. The thing about being an employee is that you work, 8 hours a day, and if you do a really good job, then you can be an owner and then be able to work 12 hours a day. And so the average worker, the average owner works 5 days a week, sometimes 6 in this industry, and usually they're more than 8-hour days. The decor of the average store, I would say, would be plaid. This means that there may be one type of flooring. You have a carpet halfway in the store, and then the other half would be some wood floor, and then maybe there'd be tile in the back room. You weren't quite sure what you're going to do yet. You might have one paneled wall, a colored wall, and the back wall had some wallpaper that you weren't quite finished with. You had some steel shelves, you had some wooden shelves, you had some metal shelving, you had an old Mill Creek cosmetic rack that you now have bread on. You have an old Kiowa, see there's a store that has these. You have an old Kiowa cardboard rack that you're now putting some Slim Fast or something on. And so you have this overall plaid look to your store. Sales, the average sales per square foot at that time was about $250 per square foot. And actually they haven't really changed too much for the industry average for that size store. And employees, most of us that had smaller stores that size, found that was one of our biggest headaches. We would show them what to do, come back the next day, and they'd forget that we didn't know what was wrong with the employees that we had. But on the other side of the coin, we didn't realize that a lot of our employees are looking at our bosses and saying, gosh, what are wrong with these bosses? I mean, if they could just let me run this place, we'd do a much better job. So what I did, I sat down and thought, now what would it be like to be in heaven? If I could, in my 1,700 square foot store, be doing $1 million a year in that store. If I could be generating a net profit of 15%. If I could come into the store 2 days. Now let me explain this part of it. I don't expect to actually be retired, but if I could, I found that when I was in the store, I should be with my customers. I should be out in the front and working with my customers. And the busier and busier I got, the more and more I was away from my customers. I was in the back room with my nose in the computer, or I was working on this or working on that and working with sales reps, but not really out on the floor. So if I could spend a couple days working in my office, off location, for me it happened to be a home office where I could spend some more time with my family and there do my promotions and my advertising and make my telephone contacts with suppliers and phone my orders in, and then spend 2 days in the store, that for me would be heaven. If I could have a beautiful decor, same floor all the way through the entire store, the walls all color coordinated, I got rid of the old Mill Creek rack when it wasn't working any longer, and any of the other things looked all like they were done on purpose for a change, like there was a plan to this thing and it looked nice. If I could generate sales at $750 a square foot, that would be perfect. And if I could have a turnkey operation, meaning I could leave my store and come to an expo like this and maybe spend a week here, and when I got back, my store was still there, and the customers were still coming in, and my employees were there, ringing up their cash register, and the money was going in the cash register, and then going to the bank where it belonged, that would be heaven. Well, I want to let you know that it didn't happen overnight, but I was able to achieve heaven in our store. In fact, we exceeded all of these goals. By the time I sold my 1,700 square foot store, we were doing over $1.5 million. Our net profit was 16%. I came into the store 2 days. I worked 2 days in my home office, but was on site for 2 days. We loved our store. It was beautiful. It looked like it was done on purpose. We were generating sales close to $1,000 per square foot, and we basically developed a turnkey operation. When I first started working with people as a consultant, I first asked them to assess themselves and find out a little bit about your own store. Ask yourself some key questions. Number one, are you experiencing annual sales increases of at least 10%? Now, the industry has been growing up until last year, usually at least 10% a year. In fact, the finer stores, the stores that know how to merchandise and advertise and promote and do everything right that we'll be talking about in this seminar are growing usually 15 to 20% a year. If you're not growing at least 10% a year, then there's something wrong. There's no way we can stay still in business. If we're not growing, we're losing ground. Are you turning your inventory at least 12 times a year? Some of us in this room don't even know what an inventory turn is, and that's okay. We'll learn about that. But this is one of the most critical areas that we need to master in retailing, because properly turning our inventory is what makes us money. And too many of us are worried about discounts, and we get hung up on these discounts and think that by making a great margin on a product, we're going to make more money, when in reality, the faster we can turn and sell our merchandise. In this industry, the average inventory turn is 6, and we should be at 12. And we'll show you how you can get to 12 and more. Are you utilizing your retail space to the fullest? This is another very common error. Many stores will come in and say, gee, I want to remodel. I'm growing out of this space. And we'll go in and say, instead of spending, not remodel, but move to a new location or expand. And instead of spending $20 or $30 or $50 or $100,000 on an expansion, all we had to do was show them how to better utilize the space. Save a lot of money that way. Are you successfully competing with other stores? Many of us are intimidated with other stores. And we shouldn't be. We should be able to compete with other stores successfully, no matter what size. Are you enjoying a 15% bottom line net profit? We are too much of a top-line industry. All we hear is growth, 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 and growth is fine, but it doesn't really mean that much. It's what we are netting that really shows the health of a business. Question?
Is that before or after the owner's salary?
That would be including, as an owner, are you making 15%, including your salary for a small store? If you're a bigger corporation, then you're going to be looking a little bit differently at that. A big real corporation, if you had a store that's probably over 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, then if you can see a 10% bottom line, that would be something to shoot for. But most of our big stores are seeing a 1 or 2% bottom line. In fact, the average bottom line for stores over 5,000 square feet is about 1.2%. The most profitable store in this industry, by the way, if you're looking to open up the most profitable store, is usually 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. As soon as you get bigger than that, your profitability drops dramatically. Dramatically drops. Getting the most for your advertising dollar. Many of us don't even really know how to advertise in this industry. And we've tried all kinds of things. Tried a coupon once, that didn't work. I tried a few ads in the paper. I tried this. I tried TV. I tried radio. There's specific things that work, specific that don't. Tomorrow, we spend about an hour and a half strictly on advertising. What works, what doesn't. Are you pleased with your decor and layout? And really, most importantly, are you enjoying what you're doing? So from this self-assessment, there's going to be some things that, I'm doing okay on those. And if you can check yes to all those, then you come up here and help me give a seminar. But if there are some other areas here that maybe we can't check off, then what you want to do is decide, where am I going to focus? Where am I going to put my emphasis today? So what we're going to have you do is look at your store a little differently. For instance, I want you to all picture in your mind your house, and I know you have a house that you live in, or a home, or an apartment, or something. And something about a homeowner, I know every time we move or we build a house, it's like you get out there and you put landscaping in, and you put a deck in, and you do all this work. So the house, to you, in your vision, looks like a lot more than just boards and windows and lawn. But if you want to sell your house, a buyer comes up, and a buyer doesn't see everything that you see. He doesn't feel that love and attention was put into that house, so he's saying, look, this is what I want to offer you for the house. Now, when an appraiser comes in and says, we're looking to give you a loan on this house, the appraiser looks at this a little bit differently. He says, well, that's about all we're going to give you, because that's about all it's worth in the market. Of course, when a tax man comes around to assess that property, and the tax man is going to assess it, he has a little bit different picture of what your house looks like. And then, of course, when it comes time for your lender to give you actual money for that house, your lender then looks at it a little differently. So we're going to have you look at your store not only through the eyes of an owner or an employee, but as a consumer, as the general public, your community. People are looking at your store a lot differently than you're looking at it, and that's what we want to look at. I've had the opportunity of the last 2 years going down to Australia and New Zealand and putting on seminars there for groups of natural food stores and realtors, and thinking of the last overhead here, and chemists or pharmacists. And it's great seeing the competition between Australia. Just looks at themselves as this mini America. I mean, they really want to be like America, and they try to emulate everything that we do. And they're always trying to outdo and think that they're just, one another. Australia is known for its large ranches. I have some very large ranches down there. In fact, it would make some of ours in Texas look very small. And there was an Australian and a Texas rancher that got together. And the Australian rancher said, I want you to come down and see my spread. So the Texas rancher flew down there. And so the Australian rancher took him out on his horse, and they traveled for a while up to a little mountain. He says, from that base of that mountain over to the lake, down over these rolling hills, that's all my property. And the Texan says, well, that's about 1/5 of my estate back home. So get back on the horse again, and they go traveling for a while. And they said, those 3,000 head of cattle, that's all mine. 5,000 sheep, all mine. Texan says, yeah, that's about 1/3 of the holdings I have back at home. Just about that time, this kangaroo comes bounding down in front of him. And the Texan comes back on his horse and says, my gosh, what was that? And the Australian says, hey, Mike, don't you have grasshoppers in Texas? Poor guy made a mistake. Some of us make mistakes. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be here if you made too many mistakes, but here are 7 of the biggest mistakes that we make generally in business. The first one is lacking a plan. That we just, hey, mortgage the house and open a health food store because I really want to do it. And let's just get this store open, and that's our plan. Just open it. Not having really a cash flow analysis, an advertising plan, a marketing plan, and really a basic idea of what we're going to be doing. And without this plan, we run the business by the seat of our pants, and as a result, we run into a lot of problems. Specifically, if we happen to have the business grow faster than we can really handle it. And this is a problem for a lot of us. We all of a sudden are doing $700,000 or $800,000 or $900,000 a year, and we don't know how to handle that because we don't really have a plan. Number 2 is running out of money. We get enough to open the store, to get the doors open, enough merchandise, but then we haven't really left sufficient for a good advertising budget. And we recommend that 4%, the industry standard outside of this industry is 4% of your startup cost for the first year in advertising. So if it costs you $200,000 to build a store, you're going to, not for your first year, for your grand opening alone. So if it's going to cost you $200,000 to build a store, you're going to want to spend $8,000 on your grand opening. That's the standard outside of our industry. And we'll be lucky if we get people to spend $500, $600, $700, $800, sometimes $1,000 or $2,000 in smaller stores. The third mistake that we make is not knowing the numbers. Be surprised how many of us times I will go into stores and ask them what their annual sales are, or what their net is, or what their percentage of rent, and I don't know, I give it all to my accountant and he tells me at the end of the year. Well, that's way too late to find out how we're doing in business. We need to find out each month. And there are only really a few numbers that are important, and what we're going to do is let you know those numbers, but you need to know them on a regular basis. I think mine is the center one there, if you're trying to turn it down just a tad. The fourth mistake we make is taking customers for granted. See, we assume that our customers all buy what we want to sell, or that they're all like us, not realizing that customers many times buy completely differently than what we think we can sell. And it's amazing what stores are finding out in customer surveys now about their own store. They never knew before that our customers didn't want this, or they wanted this, because we took them for granted. Many of us don't even know the profile of our customer. I have one client I worked with recently, and this man has 7 stores, doing close to $20 million. And he opened up his 8th store, a 9,000 square foot store, without really doing any demographic work. Said it looked like a good place. Hired me to come in wondering why they're losing $25,000 a month. And they'd already lost them for 10 months, so they'd lost $250,000 now after they opened this beautiful store. And they already had 7 other stores. He knew what he was doing. And I looked at the demographics. It took me 3 hours to go over this, and for $500, I think, or $300, or whatever the final bill for this man was, he found out that he never should have built the store there because his customers weren't there. What he was trying to sell was he was putting the store where the customers were not. The demographics couldn't be worse. Didn't know his customers, took them for granted. And he poured all kinds of money into advertising. I don't care how much money you spend on advertising. If you don't have the demographics there, you might as well not open the store of that size. I can tell you one thing, you can open up a 3,000 square foot store almost anywhere in the United States if you run just a reasonable location analysis and set up your store with a good product mix and have a good knowledge and a good grand opening package. But you get over 3,000 square feet and it becomes very risky. And what happens in this industry is we are getting And the Merchandiser is a great magazine. So Whole Foods, I mean, the health food business, they all do a great job. But I think we get this natural food merchandiser type of impression of that the industry is a larger industry of all these big stores out there, and you've got to be bigger and bigger and better to make it. When in actuality, less than 5% of the stores in this industry are over 4,000 square feet. 95% of the stores are under 4,000 square feet in this industry. And the average store in this industry does less than $400,000 a year. That's the actuality. And for every store that's opening that's over 4,000 square feet, there are 20 opening 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. So we can't take our customers for granted. The fifth mistake we make is keeping our employees in the dark. Ever heard of mushroom management? How do you grow mushrooms? Grow mushrooms in a dark room. You feed them nothing but manure. And when they start to grow, you cut them off at the knees. Okay? That's mushroom management. And in small businesses, we tend to get involved in that kind of thing because we really don't know how to be a boss. We think that we know it all, and we don't want the employees to know anything. I mean, we don't want them to see our profit and loss statement. We don't want them to all know what kind of sales we're making a day or anything like that, which is the worst thing we can do. For properly being able to grow in any business, we have to at least share with our employees the top half of a P&L, meaning your sales by department and by category, and your purchases by department and category, so that you can see where your sales are going. Are you selling more produce, less produce? Are you selling more food, less food? Because we are a very trendy industry. We are so trendy in this industry that 85% of what we are selling right now was not even in existence 5 years ago. 85% was not even in existence 5 years ago. Now what that means is we're not introducing 20% new product every year into our stores and removing 20% of the slow sellers. And you need to have both hands of this equation. Too many people just keep adding new products and they're not removing the slow sellers, and that's a problem. But if we are not doing that, we're not keeping up with the industry. And so we have to let our employees know this. The only way we can grow. When we get into the employee section part, we'll learn one of my favorite quotes that was on my desk for 2 years, and it took me 2 years to learn it, was that my business is not running the store, but to develop people who can run the store, because there's a difference. The sixth mistake we are making is computer mania. Now, I don't want this to be misconstrued here. One of the things when you're in the information business, it's easy to get misquoted. I think that anybody that is doing more than $100,000 a year gross sales should be using a handheld computer if it's available by your major distributor for ordering. If you are not using the handheld MSI, Telxon, Azure dated handheld computer that your major supplier will give to you either for free or for a very minimal charge, then you are wasting an awful lot of time ordering. Generally, we spend too much time ordering as it is, and we'll get into that when we talk about ordering. We spend way too much time in this industry ordering. We should be spending more time out with our customers. But that computer I'm not talking about. Everybody should use that for ordering. What we are talking about in computer mania is when people try to get into front-end computerization prematurely. We try to get involved in scanning. We try to get involved in computerizing our entire operation. And what happens, we spend more time and money with our nose stuck in front of that screen, thinking it's going to give us all this information and save us all this time. And the computer people will be the first ones to tell you that the computer will not save you any time. I can tell you that right now. It will not save you any time. You will be trading one type of time for another. You'll be trading terminal time for something you're doing manually. I just returned from putting on seminars for the University of Wisconsin for about, I guess it was 125 co-op owners. And most of these, the average in business there was doing $2 to $3 million a year. And we had an hour discussion on scanning. And out of all these stores, there were about 15 that had, 15 of them did have had put in scanning. One of them said it was worth it. 14 said it was the biggest headache in their life. I've gone into stores that are doing $1 million a year. I've gone into their back room and saw this order, 200 cases. I said, oh, when did that come in? They said yesterday. I said, well, how come it's not out on the floor? It takes 2 days to get it all programmed in the computer. We can't put it out till Friday. You are losing sales. Is the tail wagging the dog here? I am not against computers. I wish that we were at the stage where we could be computerized like a grocery store. But our differences are, a grocery store orders from one supplier, one order number. The UPC code is the order number. Now, I have been squawking, for lack of a better word, for 8 years now to our suppliers and saying, why don't we have one universal order number for all of our products? Let it be the UPC number. So we're not having to figure out what the order number is from every different supplier, one order number. So when we get to that point, when we have one order number for the product, that will help. In some of our stores, only half of our items are UPC coded, meaning we have to manually code these products to scan them. And if you are dealing with a very perishable store, the more perishables you sell, the more scanning becomes a headache. Your price changes are every day. You spend the first hour or two just entering all your new prices on your product, and you go out into the store and you have to put all the changes in front of the people, because one of the advantages of scanning is you have to price all your products, but you got to make sure they're priced on the shelf. And then someone comes and picks up this bottle here and says they don't want it, and they put it over here, and it's under a different label. And they come up to have it scanned. I said, I thought it was $1.99. No, it's $3.99 because you picked it up under the wrong place. So, any of us here have scanning front ends? Can you comment on that? Do we have, are you having a good situation? I'd love to hear some success stories. Okay. Yes, sir.
We just have to dump that system in China to cause so many problems.
Okay, you just dumped your system because it caused so many problems.
It's been months trying to get implemented, still not there yet.
Months, okay. Same thing. Okay, so that's the purpose of us saying is, I wish that we could be there. I mean, theoretically, what it says it will do and what it will do are two different things. And for any of you that are really seriously considering scanning, this is what I ask you to do, is you go back to the people who are trying to sell you the unit and say, I'd like the name of 5 natural food stores, my size, with my product mix, that have been online for more than a year, and let me talk with them. If you can't deliver name 5 stores that have been online for more than a year, then you want to look at this like the medical doctors look at a new procedure. When a new procedure comes out, there is an unwritten law in the medical profession. You're never one of the first ones to accept it, but you're never one of the last. But you wait until it's been a little proven, and wait till the lawsuits kind of settle, and the people get it perfected, and then right somewhere in the, towards the middle of the top there, you jump in, and you get involved in that new practice, and you're never the last one to take advantage of it. Scanning is going to be the same way. I wish we were there, but I can only give you the example of one store doing less than $5 million that is successful. And this is an individual who has 500 square foot Great Earth store in Texas. He's a computer whiz. He writes 3 checks a month, one to Great Earth for 90% of his vitamins, and 2 to 2 other small suppliers. He loves computers. He wrote his own program and is working for his store. He also has 800 SKUs. So, enough said. Computer mania, that alone I've seen stores spend $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 they just had to scrap. Learn from it. And the 7th mistake is egomania, where as owners, we feel we are the only ones that know what we're doing. We're the only one that can do it right. And so we let egomania destroy us. You'll see a little later when I start writing on this board here that my penmanship does not win any records. And if I was to write all of my own store's signs, my in-store signage, you'd never be able to read them. But I have an employee that does a great job on in-store signs. So what we should do as bosses is to find out what are the talents of the other people there, because some people have talents that are far surpassing mine in many areas throughout the store. But if we let egomania tell us, I'm going to do it all because I'm the boss. By making a lot of these mistakes, some of us are like this lost dog. 3 legs, blind in left eye, missing right ear, tail broken, recently castrated, answers to the name of Lucky. Many of us in our business, poor merchandising, stock turns down about 4 times a year. We don't know how to train our employees. We've got a lousy advertising program, no decor, but we're still making money. Answers to the name of Lucky. Many of us in this industry are actually successful in spite of ourselves. And it is amazing. But with just a few of these things to correct, it's amazing how we can improve dramatically. First of all, when we're talking about having a plan, let's realize there are 2 ways that you can organize your company or your store. One of them, if you're a management-driven company, what you do is you have the owner on top giving direction to the managers, who then have the employees carry out those directions, and the customer basically gets the effect of whatever the owner, management, employees decide. This is called a management-driven company. If you are a sales-driven company, then the customer is listened to. We find out what the customer wants, and the employee then gathers this information, feeds it to management, and policies are set by the owner based on the flow of information coming from here rather than from here. To be successful in retail sales, we should try to be a sales-driven company. Having all of our policies come from the consumer or from suggestions from the employees who are working with the consumers all the time, rather than up here from the individual sitting at the desk that really, like an ostrich, has his head in the sand, in many ways respecting what's actually happening down at the cash register. There are some key overheads here, and if you do not have a workbook, this is something you want to copy word for word. Several years ago, there was a large supermarket chain in Southern California that wanted to get into the natural food business, and they wanted to do it correctly. So what they did was go out to a marketing firm, and they paid them $100,000 to find out, how do we successfully market natural foods? What is the natural food industry all about? How do we do this? And this is the result of that. Someone paid $100,000 for this page right now, and it is extremely important. Some of it's going to sound basic, but if it's developed properly, you'll see how it can be most valuable. Get to number one here is to focus better. Find out what your customers want, give them more of that. Find out what your customers don't want, and give them less of that. Now, this can sound awful basic, but I'll tell you that you can spend days on this, like I have, just that one, and apply it to finding out what your customer wants in decor, in your location, in your product mix, in your level of service that you give, in the employees that you choose. It can go on. Two parts: finding out what they want and give them more of that, finding out what they don't want and taking that away. Number two is deciding who you are. Many of us don't know who we are, and we try because we read the magazine. We think, boy, I got to have a deli, because if you have a deli, you're going to be successful. Wrong. If you don't have enough traffic in your store, it can be the worst move that you ever make. There was one of my clients in Seattle. We had a half-a-day consultation with her. Actually, we had a full-day consultation, and at lunchtime, we were sitting down. I said, Sharon, what got you interested in this industry? What brought you into natural food? She said, well, I used to have a terrible skin problem, and I started using these natural cosmetics, and my skin just started to radiate and change. She said, I just improved it so dramatically that I really got involved in all of the products. And she just actually glowed while she started talking about all these cosmetics and stuff. And I said, boy, here's a natural born cosmetic. She is really sold on this. We go back into her store, and she has a store that's kind of like this. Here's the front door. She had a couple gondolas going down the long way of the store here. And there was this little section in here that she had candy and snacks in. Went back in her store, and her cosmetics were placed on the back of this gondola at this part in her store. I said, okay, Sharon, why don't we take this little section in here, put some mirrors in here, maybe a little display case, and make this like a little cosmetic boutique area. Put your cosmetics in this particular section. This isn't drawn to scale. This is not quite as large in the proportion of the store. And you could start doing sampling. You could advertise to bring some reps in and have them do facials and classes. Like Borland comes in and will do for you for no charge, do makeovers. So she did this. A year and a half later, I read about her in an industry magazine, and when we first met with her, her sales were $400,000. 1 year later, she was doing $600,000. She increased her sales $200,000, and her whole focus now, she said she was known as the cosmetic queen of Seattle. People were coming from all over because her focus now was changed. She decided who she was, and she was known as the one who knew everything about natural cosmetics, and people would come in and flood to get these types of things in her store. She decided who she was. Number three, once you decide, you stay with your direction for a long time. Now, this is extremely important with advertising. A big mistake we make is that we don't let our advertising program run long enough. We'll find out when we get into the advertising, it takes 7 impressions before the customer really has it sink in, and too many of us don't stay with something for 7 times, either 7 ads or 7 spots or whatever. Stay in your direction for a long time because it takes a long time to educate the customer. Number 4, you pick out your target group and communicate solely to those people. Too many of us try to be too many things to too many people, rather than targeting, saying, this is what I'm going to go after, and do the best we can in that one thing. Honesty is the best policy. Now, that should go without saying in this industry, but there is too much misinformation still in this industry. We are still going out and saying, take rosehip vitamin C because it's better than ascorbic acid. And I mean, ascorbic acid is a chemical name for vitamin C, and rosehip is just a source. I mean, 99% of the vitamin C that we're selling is corn sugar based or fermented process that comes from Hoffman LaRoche. I mean, there are some other types of C's out there, but that's the basis of our vitamin C, and we should know that. We shouldn't be trying to sell something that's not there, make something better than it really is. We should know the difference. You can't get more than a half a milligram naturally of B6 in a tablet, and we're out there saying there's a 50 milligram B that's all natural, which is impossible. It's impossible to get anything more in an all-natural form of about a half a milligram of B6 if you didn't fortify it. So what they do is they get yeast and they call it fortified yeast. Fortified with what? Fortified with synthetic pyridoxine. That's how it's fortified. Well, we have to find this stuff out. We should know these things. We should know in vitamin E, there's only 2 companies in the world that have the patent for natural vitamin E. Kodak, Eastman Kodak, and Henkel Corporation are the only 2 companies that have the patent for natural vitamin E, and all natural vitamin E basically are made by these 2 companies. And then they sell it to various different encapsulators who sell it to us. And so sometimes by knowing this, we can get a very good product at a good price and compete with, quote, the drugstores that are selling a $5.99 all-natural E, because we can actually sell a $5.99 all-natural E too. So honesty is the best policy, and we need to learn about that and not get involved in making statements out to the public that we can't not substantiate. If the 1980s was the era to be believed as an industry, we were striving to get this become believable. The 1990s is going to be the era to be understood. And the way we're understood is by giving out truthful, factual information. Number 6, and this is very important because number 6 came from exit polls. As people left natural food stores, they were asked, why did you come into the store? Why did you come in? And the first, I don't know why, it's a difficult time to focus on this. First thing the customers wanted to come in for was service. Second was fresh. Third was nutrition. D, interfacing with employees. Why they come into natural food stores. Extremely important to realize this. Do you know that the price isn't even in here? We can learn from omission. This is not a price industry, believe it or not. It is an issue industry. If people believe our issues and they believe and understand that a natural vitamin is better than a synthetic, if they believe that organic food is better, if they understand and believe that, then price is not an issue. Price is not the issue. But if they don't believe that, then price becomes an issue because they can't see, how can I wind up, I can buy a loaf of bread for 59 cents down at Safeway. Why should I spend $1.19 for yours? So we teach them that through interfacing with employees. Why they don't like to shop at a regular grocery store is have you ever seen any interfacing with an employee at a grocery store? The only time they'll say anything is when you're checking out. Would you like that in paper or plastic? That's it. That's the interfacing. You know, walk up to an employee in a Safeway store and say, pardon me, what's Kyolic good for? Kyolic? What's Kyolic? Yeah. That's something that we can supply that the regular food industry can't. So knowing this, if you have this information of how to successfully market it, the next bit of information we need to know is a little bit about our own industry before we just run off and start opening our own store. Realizing first that we are about a $4 billion industry. And the fastest growing, I'm not going to read all this stuff off because the chart is there. The fastest growing segment of our industry is organic. Organics are up about 68%. Or 40%, depending on which statistics you read, but there still are, it is the number 1 growing in the industry. Food sales are definitely growing. Supplement sales have been pretty flat, even they were on a decline for many years. Now they're kind of flat, except for your sports nutrition. Is there a question there? No, you're just adjusting, okay. Size, these are the different size stores. You can see only 4% are over 4,000 square feet. Most of us fall in this range right here, 1,000 to 4,000 square foot range, most of the stores. Volume, again, to give you an idea of what the volumes actually are. 6% of the stores have greater than $1 million, 400,000 average for all stores. But if you'll see right here that you've got 40% of the stores do less than 200,000. And if there was a 400,000 break here, we'd have almost, I think 70-something% of our stores do less than 400,000.
This concludes the program on this tape. Please turn it over to continue.